Welcome to Mill History Talk, the podcast where we explore the past to better understand the profession of arms today. We dive into the campaigns, conflicts, issues, and commanders that have shaped military thinking across centuries, and why it all still matters. Whether you're an officer in training, a seasoned professional, a student of strategy, or simply curious about how history informs modern warfare, this space is for you. Our mission is simple: to foster insight, reflection, and critical thinking primarily through the lens of military history. Before we begin, a quick note. The views expressed in this podcast are of the podcast writers, hosts, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any government agency or organization. So, whether you're listening in a barracks, a lecture hall, at the gym, or in your car on the way to work, welcome. We're glad you're here. Hey everyone, it's Hope. Welcome to Mill History Talk, episode 46. And before we dive into the chaos of 1942, we've got a big announcement. Mill History Talk has officially expanded onto YouTube. Yep, we now have a full channel, complete with long-form episodes, curated playlists, and rapid-fire shorts featuring the hardware we talk about on this show. The link is waiting for you in the podcast notes. Go hit subscribe like you're defending Henderson Field at dusk.
And don't worry, the podcast remains our flagship. YouTube just lets us show you more of what we're explaining here. Thankfully, Hope won't be reenacting the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal with action figures.
Brian, don't tempt me. I am totally capable of building a scale model of Iron Bottom Sound.
And that is exactly why I said it. Anyway, today we're tackling Guadalcanal and what it reveals about 21st century Joint Multidomain Operations, or JMDO.
This is the campaign where the U.S. basically invented joint operations on the fly, while sick, undersupplied, and outnumbered. And somehow, it worked. Picture it. Mid-1942. Japan is on a winning streak that makes the Patriots look humble. They're building an airfield on Guadalcanal that would cut Allied supply lines to Australia. So the U.S. launches its first big offensive, Operation Watchtower. Limited carriers, no real joint doctrine, and, honestly, a lot of improvisation.
But strategically, it was unavoidable. If Japan finished that airfield, they could dominate the sea lanes. Control of Guadalcanal meant control of the Central Solomons. Modern doctrine would call this operationally decisive terrain.
And Henderson Field became the most overworked runway in the Pacific. Imagine an airport where the flight schedule is, all planes that can will fly today.
And yet, that airfield became the linchpin of the entire campaign. Without it, the Marines would have been cut off. The Navy couldn't have maintained sea control. And Japan's Tokyo Express destroyer fleet would have had free reign at all hours.
All right, let's roll the tape back to August 7th, 1942. Before the chaos, before the nighttime torpedo runs, before Iron Bottom Sound earned its name, this is when the U.S. Marines hit the beaches of Guadalcanal. In one of the first major American amphibious offensives of World War II, the 1st Marine Division storms ashore and seizes a nearly completed Japanese airfield.
The Japanese call it Lunga Point Airfield. The Americans rename it Henderson Field, honoring Major Lofton Henderson, killed earlier at Midway. By the end of the first day, the Marines control the airfield and the surrounding terrain. It's a stunning achievement, fast, bold, and decisive. But they barely have time to enjoy it.
Because on August 9th, while the Marines are still unloading supplies, the Japanese strike back with a vengeance. The Battle of Savo Island becomes one of the worst defeats in U.S. naval history. 4 Allied cruisers are sunk in under an hour. The covering force is shattered.
The carriers withdraw. The transports flee. And just like that, the Marines are stranded. Only half their supplies are ashore. The Japanese retain night dominance. And Henderson Field isn't even finished. The campaign's reality arrives quickly. No one is coming to save you. At least, not soon.
Fast forward to August 21st. Colonel Ichiki's elite Japanese detachment launches a nighttime assault on the marine perimeter at the Tenaru River. They expect to sweep the Marines aside. They do not.
The Marines repel the attack with devastating firepower. The Ichiki detachment is virtually annihilated. But more Japanese troops are on the way, many more. Just like that, the campaign shifts from bold landing to siege.
By late August, Henderson Field becomes operational enough to launch the first missions of the Cactus Air Force. Patchwork aircraft, exhausted pilots, improvised maintenance. But it works. And when the planes fly, they control the daytime skies and the seas.
The Japanese adapt. Unable to move by day because of the threat of the bombers of the Cactus Air Force, they shift to night operations using destroyers. The infamous Tokyo Express. Beginning in late August and continuing for months, these high-speed runs deliver troops and supplies under the cover of darkness to the Japanese land forces. They also bring the dreaded Type 93 Long Lance torpedo.
It's every night the Marines see muzzle flashes offshore, Japanese destroyers firing blindly into the jungle or shelling the airfield. Every morning, the Marines wake up to more enemy troops in the trees. A psychological grind settles in.
The crisis peaks on September 13th and 14th at Edson's Ridge. Japan commits thousands of troops to break the American lines and seize Henderson Field. If the ridge falls, the airfield falls. If the airfield falls, the campaign collapses.
The Marines fight through the night, desperate close-quarters combat. Edson's raiders hold by inches. At dawn, the Japanese assault breaks. Henderson Field survives. Barely.
While the Marines fight ashore, the Navy battles at sea. On August 24th, at the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, the U.S. stops a major Japanese reinforcement convoy. Then, on the night of October 11th and 12th, at Cape Esperance, the U.S. Navy finally wins a nighttime surface action, a sign that U.S. radar tactics are catching up.
But it's not all good news. On October 26th, the Battle of Santa Cruz sees the U.S. lose the carrier USS Hornet and heavily damage to the USS Enterprise. It looks like a Japanese victory, but Japan loses dozens of irreplaceable carrier pilots. Their elite air arm never recovers.
By November, Japan makes one last push. They send battleships Hiei and Kirishima to bombard Henderson Field. If they succeed, the airfield will be knocked out long enough to land massive reinforcements. The U.S. responds with every available ship.
The nights of November 12th through 15th become some of the wildest naval combat in history. Point-blank battleship duels, chaotic destroyer melees, radar-directed gunfire, and the famous charge of the ragtag U.S. cruiser group that damages Hiei so badly she is scuttled the next day.
On the final night, November 15th, the battleship USS Washington destroys Kirishima with precise radar salvos. With both their battleships lost and the airfield still operational, Japan's final reinforcement attempt fails. By December 1942, the Japanese position on Guadalcanal is collapsing. Troops are starving, malaria is everywhere, units are operating at a fraction of their strength, and the Tokyo Express can no longer deliver meaningful supplies. Japan must choose between continuing a losing battle or saving what remains of its army.
And that's where the math hits. 6 months of brutal fighting has gutted both sides, but Japan cannot replace what it has lost. Let's break it down, Brian.
By campaign's end, Japan has lost approximately 24 major warships, including 2 battleships, cruisers, and dozens of destroyers. Over 800 aircraft across land and sea operations. More than 25,000 soldiers and sailors, many to starvation and disease. And most devastating, an irreplaceable cadre of highly trained naval aviators, the core of their carrier air groups. These losses shatter Japan's offensive capability for the remainder of the Pacific War.
The U.S. loses heavily too. 2 fleet carriers, Wasp, torpedoed in September, and Hornet sunk at Santa Cruz in October. More than 25 ships, including cruisers and destroyers, shattered in the night battles. Around 7,000 killed across all services. And for months, the U.S. Navy is down to a single operational carrier in the South Pacific. These aren't light losses. They shape the entire war through early 1943.
But here's the hard strategic truth. Despite losing Wasp and Hornet, despite losing cruisers and destroyers, and despite taking thousands of casualties, the United States can replace its losses. Japan cannot.
And even more importantly, the U.S. holds the decisive strategic position. Henderson Field remains operational. The island remains in American hands. And that means control of the sea by day, denial of Japanese reinforcement, a forward base to strike deeper into the Solomons. The U.S. doesn't just win the battle, it wins the strategic initiative in the Pacific.
Japan makes the only rational decision left. Between January 1st and February 7th, 1943, the Tokyo Express changes roles. It becomes a rescue mission, evacuating nearly 11,000 survivors of units that once numbered more than 30,000. The Imperial Japanese Army withdraws. The battle for Guadalcanal is over.
And with that withdrawal, the strategic tide of the entire Pacific War turns. Guadalcanal isn't just a victory, it's the moment the Allies seize the initiative and never give it back. So, what does a 6-month slugfest in 1942 teach us about modern Joint Multidomain Operations and a possible 21st century fight in the Indo-Pacific? Honestly, almost everything.
Henderson Field was decisive. In the modern Pacific, forward bases, real or temporary, will be equally decisive. From Luzon to the Ryukyus, holding key islands enables air dominance, logistics nodes, and maritime control.
The Cactus Air Force dictated what the Japanese Navy could do during the day. Today, land-based missiles, drones, and aircraft will control sea lanes and deny adversary movement across vast distances.
The Japanese didn't lose Guadalcanal due to tactics. They lost it because they couldn't supply their troops. Future Indo-Pacific operations hinge on distributed, survivable logistics across thousands of miles. Fuel, ammo, repair parts, everything must be mobile, dispersed, and hard to target.
Guadalcanal's commanders constantly fought blind, broken radios, bad intel, and zero situational awareness. That's basically Tuesday in a modern contested electromagnetic environment. You have to operate under uncertainty and still achieve the mission.
Land forces protected the airfield. Air forces controlled the sea lanes by day. Naval forces permitted bombardment by night. That interdependence is exactly what JMDO formalizes. Multiple domains acting in synchronized, mutually supporting ways.
Guadalcanal wasn't just a turning point in World War II. It's a preview, an eerie blueprint, for the challenges the U.S. Joint Force will face across island chains, contested seas, and enormous distances today.
The technology changes, the geography changes, but the fundamentals, logistics, domain integration, adaptive leadership, remain exactly the same.
And that's our full chronicle of Guadalcanal and its modern implications. Don't forget to check the YouTube link in the show notes. We've got new shorts and breakdowns hitting every week.
And remember, victory requires courage and logistics, mostly logistics.
We'll see you next episode on Mill History Talk. Same time, same place, fewer nighttime destroyer battles. Promise.